They mocked the Runt orc, now they bow to a god. The chieftain's spit freezes midair. It's a tiny crystal of contempt, and it shatters on the packed snow at Grak's feet. Around him, the circle of gray-green skin and snarling tusks is a fortress of disgust. These are the Ironfang Clan, behemoths of muscle and rage. And Grak? He's nothing. A flaw. A runt. The word is a physical blow, spat from the mouth of every warrior, every mother, every child he's ever known. Korgal, the clan chieftain, a mountain of scarred flesh and black iron, points a thick finger toward the endless white beyond the camp. The shaman has foreseen the winter of white fangs, he growls. It will be a winter of scouring. A winter that starves the weak and tests the strong. The clan cannot afford burdens. His voice is the grinding of stones, a sound that has commanded armies. Today, it's all aimed at Grak, an orc barely half the size of the others, with tusks that are little more than nubs. You will not have a warrior's death. You will not have a clan burial, Korgal declares. You will walk into the wastes until the cold takes you. This is my word. This is the law of the Ironfang. No one speaks for him. No one meets his pleading gaze. Not the warriors who used him as a whetstone for their insults, not the she-orcs who turned their backs as if his weakness were a disease. He's a ghost already, haunting the last moments of his own life. With a final, collective grunt of approval, the clan turns away, leaving him alone as the first flakes of the prophesied superwinter begin to fall. He is cast out. Forgotten. But as he takes his first step into that blinding white hell, a spark of something colder and harder than any winter courses through him. It isn't hope. It's rage. And in the desolate wastes, rage is a currency that can get the attention of the gods. So, to understand the ice forming in Grak's soul, you have to understand the fire he was forged in, or rather, the fire that failed to temper him. The Ironfang clan was built on one brutal principle: strength is life. Their home in the shadow of the jagged spine mountains was an unforgiving world of sharp rocks, screaming winds, and creatures that could snap an orc's spine without a second thought. In a place like that, you were either a hammer or an anvil. Grak was born an anvil, and a small one at that. From his first breath, he was a disappointment. Runts weren't unheard of, but they were usually culled at birth, a mercy killing to prevent a life of shame. Grak's mother, in a moment of weakness Korgal would never let her forget, hid him away. But that act of defiance didn't save him, it just postponed his sentence. His childhood was a relentless gauntlet of humiliation. While other young orcs wrestled and learned the brutal art of the cleaver, Grak was just trying to keep up. The other children, led by a brutish young orc named Borak, saw him as a toy. Borak was Korgal's son, the spitting image of the Ironfang ideal, and he'd inherited all of his father's cruelty. Borak's favorite game was break the runt. He'd hold Grak down while other kids took turns punching him to see who could get the loudest yelp. They'd steal his meager rations, tossing the stringy meat into the dirt and laughing as he scrambled for the soiled scraps. They called him Pebble while they were boulders. They called him Squeak while they were roars. The training yard was just a stage for his failure. The heavy iron axes felt like anchors in his hands. He couldn't draw the war bows. A goblin has more fight than you, Runt, the instructors would snarl, smacking him with the flat of their blades. Are you sure your mother didn't lie with a manling? But in the crucible of all this abuse, something else was being forged. While the others focused on brute force, Grak learned to survive differently. He became an observer. His eyes, always downcast, saw everything: the cracks in rocks where edible insects hid, the patterns of the wind in the mountain grasses. He knew which predators hunted at which times, not by fighting them, but by learning their routes and staying out of their way. Where others saw a coward, Grak was cultivating a different kind of strength: cunning, awareness, and sheer, stubborn endurance. He couldn't outfight Borak, so he learned to anticipate his attacks and slip away. He couldn't claim a prime cut of meat, so he learned to find nutritious roots and fungi the others considered filth. He was a survivor, just not in a way his clan could recognize. His strength was quiet, patient, and invisible to anyone who only measured power in muscle. Of course, this was completely lost on the clan elders. So when the head shaman declared the coming of the winter of white fangs, panic set in. The prophecy spoke of a winter so cold that even cave bears would freeze in their dens. The clan had to get leaner. Every mouth had to be one that could hunt. And in the entire Ironfang clan, no one was considered more dead weight than Grak. The decision was swift. Casting him out wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. It was the clan purging its own weakness. As he stood before them, he saw no remorse in their eyes. Only grim satisfaction. They weren't just abandoning a clan member, they were cleansing a stain. This final rejection extinguished the last ember of hope he had for belonging and ignited the cold, dark fury that would carry him into the wastes. The silence after the clan turned its back was more deafening than any war cry. Grak was alone, dark speck against a canvas of infinite, hostile white. The wind, no longer broken by the camp's walls, attacked him with a vengeance, clawing at his thin tunic and stealing the breath from his lungs. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back and beg. But one look over his shoulder at the smoke rising from the clan's fire, a warmth he was forever denied, killed that impulse. There was nothing for him there but death. Out here, there was death, too, but at least it would be on his own terms. The first few days were a blur of misery. The cold was a constant, gnawing pain in his bones. Hunger was a hollow ache that never left. His forgotten survival skills were all he had now. He remembered where snow weasels might burrow and spent hours digging with his bare, cracked hands, only to find nothing. He chewed on the bark of skeletal trees, the bitter taste doing little to stop the cramps in his stomach. His knack for observation became his only guide. He watched carrion birds, not for what they found, but for where they came from, hoping to find a cliff that might offer shelter. He learned to read the snow, telling where it was firm and where it hid a deadly crevasse. He was hunted. The winter of white fangs made everything desperate. One night, huddled between two frozen boulders, he heard the howling of snow wolves. This wasn't the confident call of a healthy pack, this was a ragged, starved sound. He saw their gaunt silhouettes against the snow, their yellow eyes glowing with cold fire. The old Grak would have frozen in terror. But this Grak, born from total abandonment, was different. He grabbed the sharpest rock he could find and let out a low growl of pure defiance. Maybe they sensed he had nothing left to lose, or maybe he was just too small a meal to be worth the effort. After a long, tense hour, they moved on. He had faced death, and death had blinked. Weeks bled together. The world became a cycle of white days and black nights, of shivering and starving. His body started to fail. Frostbite blackened his fingers and ears. His small frame became skeletal. His mind began to fray, the wind whispering the names of his tormentors, Korgal, Borak. The end felt truly near during a blizzard of impossible fury. The world dissolved into a roaring whiteness where he couldn't see his own hands. All he could do was crawl, dragging his half-frozen body through the snow, driven by one primal command, move or die. He had no idea how long he crawled. Hours? A day? It was then that his numb fingers brushed against something that wasn't snow or rock. It was smooth and unnaturally flat. He clawed away the snow, revealing what looked like a door of polished black ice. It was set into the side of a massive, almost invisible glacier. With the last of his strength, he pulled himself through a small opening at the top and tumbled into darkness. He landed hard on a stone floor. The wind was gone. The silence was absolute. He had escaped the blizzard, but he had fallen into something else entirely. He had stumbled into a tomb the Ironfang shamans only spoke of in hushed, fearful tones, the grave of the silent frost, a temple to a forgotten god, a place from which nothing had ever returned. The darkness inside was a deep, still cold, the kind that hadn't felt a living breath in millennia. As Grak's eyes adjusted, he saw he was in a vast, circular chamber carved from the glacier's core. In the center, on a dais of that same black, glassy stone, stood an altar. It was simple, unadorned. Carved into the icy wall behind it was a single symbol, a six-pointed snowflake with an empty circle at its heart. Grak knew, instantly, that this was a place of ancient and profound power. He dragged his broken body towards the altar. He was dying. The warmth was fading from his core, the blackness of frostbite creeping up his limbs. He collapsed at the base of the dais, his ragged breath turning to thick plumes of vapor. He had nothing left. The clan had taken his home. The wastes had taken his strength. All he possessed was a heart full of cold, bitter rage and a stubborn will to live. Lying there, on the verge of unconsciousness, he did the only thing he could. He offered it all up. He didn't speak. He just opened his mind and poured his pain into the silence. He offered the humiliation from Borak, the sting of Korgul's judgment, the loneliness of the wastes, the gnawing hunger, the terror of the wolves. He laid his entire miserable existence at the foot of this forgotten god, a sacrifice of pure suffering. And something answered. There was no voice. It was a pressure inside his skull, a vast, cold intelligence examining him, sifting through his memories, tasting his despair, weighing his endurance. This god, Valen, the silent frost, wasn't a god of mighty warriors. It was the god of survival at any cost. The deification of winter itself. And in Grak, this forgotten deity saw a worthy vessel, a creature tempered by the cold, not broken by it. The pact was sealed with an infusion of unimaginable cold. It flooded his veins, pushing out the last of his failing warmth and replacing it with something new. The pain in his frostbitten fingers vanished, replaced by a numb, crystalline hardness. He watched as the blackened, dead flesh flaked away, revealing pale gray skin laced with faint, glowing blue veins. He pushed himself to his feet, a feat that should have been impossible moments before. He felt no hunger, no exhaustion, only a serene, humming power. He looked at his reflection in the polished ice wall. His eyes, once dull brown, now blazed with a soft, blue light. He could see the stress fractures in the glacier, feel the vibrations in the stone floor, sense the residual body heat of a lizard that had scurried past hours ago. Instinctively, he lifted a hand. The moisture in the air flash froze into a long, perfect shard of ice, as sharp as a glass dagger. He clenched his fist, and it shattered into 1,000 glittering motes. He was no longer just an orc. He was an avatar of the frost. Grak spent who knows how long in that sanctum, learning what he had become. The cold itself sustained him. He practiced drawing the heat from objects, leaving them brittle and frozen. He learned to create constructs of ice, barriers, weapons, decoys. The Runt was dead. In his place stood a living embodiment of the winter of white fangs. And his first thought was of home. Before we see the storm Grak is about to unleash on the Ironfang Clan, just a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this story of an outcast's rise to terrifying power, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Every subscription helps bring new stories like this one to life. Now, let's see what happens when the Runt they left to die returns as a god. The winter of white fangs was everything the shaman had prophesied. For the Ironfang Clan, life became a daily battle for survival. The beasts they hunted were gone, and hunting parties returned day after day, empty-handed and grim-faced. The clan's guiding principle, the law of strength, was turning on them. Warriors grew gaunt and irritable. Fear, an emotion the Ironfang prided themselves on never showing, began to poison the camp. Korgul's leadership, once absolute, was now being questioned in resentful whispers. He'd cast out the Runt to save the clan, but the clan was starving anyway. It was into this cauldron of desperation that Grak returned. But he didn't come back begging. He came back as a force of nature. He started as a whisper. A cage of captured snow foxes, a vital food source, was found one morning encased in a block of solid ice so thick that the strongest axes just bounced off it. Then, a patrol of 2 warriors vanished. They were found 2 days later, frozen solid, standing upright, with looks of pure terror locked on their faces. No wounds. No blood. They had simply stopped. Panic turned to dread. An unnatural wind began to weave through the camp at night, a wind that seemed to whisper a single name, Grak. Orcs swore they saw a flicker of pale blue light moving in the darkness just beyond the walls. The terror peaked when Grak finally decided to show himself. He chose the moment of greatest tension, a clan gathering where Korgal was trying to quell the rising dissent. Just as the chieftain was bellowing about strength, the heavy flap of the longhouse entrance was thrown open by a violent gust of wind that extinguished half the torches. And there, silhouetted against the swirling snow, stood a figure. It was small, no taller than the runt they cast out, but the similarity ended there. This being radiated such a profound cold that the nearest orcs gasped as the air in their lungs turned to frost. He stepped inside. It was Grak. His skin was the color of glacial ice, his eyes glowing with a blue light that cut through the shadows. The hall was stunned into a dead, fearful silence. They were looking at a ghost. It was Borak who broke the spell. Seeing the runt he had tormented for years filled him not with fear, but with rage. "Runt," he roared. "You dare return? I'll kill you for real this time." Borak charged, his massive cleaver raised. But Grak didn't flinch. He just raised a hand. The floor beneath Borak's feet glazed over with black ice. Borak's feet shot out from under him, and he crashed to the ground. Before he could get up, Grak made a soft closing gesture with his fingers. Borak's cleaver became coated in a thick layer of ice, freezing his grip to the hilt. Grak took a slow step forward and placed his palm on Borak's forehead. Borak's roar died in his throat. The clan watched in horror as his skin paled and frost formed on his tusks. Grak was draining the very life force out of him. After a few seconds, he removed his hand. Borak, the strongest of the young warriors, collapsed, a shivering, weakened wreck. This wasn't a fight. It was a lesson. Witchcraft. Korgal roared, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. "What are you?" Grak's voice was the sound of cracking ice. "I am what you made me. I am the cold you cast me into. I am your reckoning." The chieftain did the only thing he knew how, he grabbed his war axe and charged. "If you are still an orc, you will face me." Grak simply shook his head. "The time for combat is over." As Korgal charged, Grak raised both hands. He didn't summon an ice shard. He summoned the winter itself. The temperature in the longhouse plummeted. The remaining torches died, their flames freezing in place. A blizzard erupted inside the longhouse, a howling vortex of snow and ice with Grak at its calm center. Korgal, blinded and disoriented, swung his axe wildly into the gale. He might as well have been fighting the wind. He was fighting an environment controlled by the runt he had condemned. Exhausted and freezing, Korgal finally fell to his knees, his great axe slipping from his numb fingers. The blizzard ceased. Grak stood over the kneeling chieftain, his glowing eyes the only light in the darkness. He held the life of every orc in that room in the palm of his hand. The power to destroy them all pulsed inside Grak, a cold, satisfying hum. He could freeze their hearts, turn the longhouse into their tomb. It would be justice. He looked down at Korgal, broken. He looked at Borak, shivering on the floor. He looked at the faces of his clan, at their raw terror, and for the first time, their utter respect. And he realized killing them would be too simple. An end to his pain, but not a true victory. "Your way is finished," Grak's icy voice echoed. "Your obsession with brute strength is what brought you to this. You threw away the parts you deemed weak, and in doing so, you made the whole clan brittle. True strength isn't the power to break things. It's the will to endure." The will to survive. You tried to cast that strength out. And now, it has returned to rule you. He didn't take Korgal's axe or claim his throne. That was the old way. He was something new. He turned and walked to the entrance, the orcs parting before him like he was a walking god. At the doorway, he paused. You will no longer worship gods of blood and rage. You will worship the cold. You will learn its lessons of patience and endurance. You will survive this winter not by fighting it, but by understanding it. I will be your teacher. And your God. With that, he stepped back into the night. As one, a sound rippled through the terrified clan. It started with the shamans, then the warriors, then the mothers. It was the sound of knees hitting the cold stone floor. The sound of heads bowing in submission. They had mocked the runt, laughed at his weakness, and cast him out to die. Now, they bowed not to a new chieftain, but to a terrifying new deity, an unforgiving god of winter whose reign had just begun.